Okay, I think it's 3 o'clock, ready to start. Thank you.
Nobody from the city here.
Guess not.
Okay.
Zach wasn't sure. Any oral communications?
None.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda item. Before we start with the agenda, it was just a quick question for Dan. Is there a reason why Youth Services and Adult Literacy is action item number 2? And wondering if we can pull up the business number 3, introduction of library director candidate before that.
Absolutely fine. It was
Okay.
my first time putting this together,
Okay.
so whatever you want to change is
Okay,
fine by
sounds
me.
good. We're going to swap those then. Okay, thank you. So approval of the minutes? Anybody have any comments? Edits or motion?
I motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Oh, are we doing a new voting system, Zach?
I was gonna, this would be a first test for you guys to try it out if you'd like. And unfortunately, Virginia, for some reason, your name's not populating here, so I need to go back in the end. But for everyone else, if you wouldn't mind trying to vote, you just press the refresh, and then you get to cast your vote. So, Carolyn, you might need to hit it one more time. There you go. And you'll start seeing your votes populating up here. And so motion. Virginia, how do you vote? 5-0, perfect. Next meeting, I'll make sure everything is correct on the back end. We won't do that for the rest, though. Perfect. Great.
Okay. Item number 2, introduction of library director candidate. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Heidi Dollamore. I am the Vice President of Operations with Library Systems and Services, and I am so thrilled and delighted to introduce you to Reno Landa today. Reno is currently our Library Director in the City of Homestead at the Librarium, which, as you might intuit from the name, is a new approach to libraries. We partnered with the City of Homestead to build a brand new library from the ground up, and Reno was part of implementing that vision and bringing it to life. Reno is, I keep using the word, he's just a superstar, and you're going to love him. And I want to give you as much time as possible to speak with him. He is really one of our go-tos for being a thought partner, being an innovator, being a leader, with not just within his own library, but really within our entire family of libraries all across the country. So it's just a delight and a pleasure to introduce him to you and give you a chance to get to know him well.
Thank you. Just so that we're on board with the plans, I was thinking, we'll give Reno a chance to introduce himself, and then we'll start with our interview questions. And we can just go down the line, starting with Carolyn with one question, then Francis, and then we'll go down, and then we'll go back for any second questions and go that way. Welcome, Reno. We're excited to learn about you today. Could you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So let me make sure I'm not too close. So my name is Reno Landa. I am currently the director of the Homestead Librarium. I'm happy to be here, and I really thank Heidi for all those kind words. So a little bit about myself. I think John asked me right before we started, when did I know I wanted to be a librarian? It's an excellent question, and really, I think deep down I always wanted to be a librarian, but it wasn't until after college that it really came to me as I was thinking, what do I do now with my life? What job do I actually want? That I looked back at what I really loved doing. In college, I worked in libraries. Before that, I was a volunteer throughout middle school and high school in libraries. And then thinking back, okay, what have I really enjoyed? And it's like, well, you've been doing what you enjoyed. It's been in libraries, and especially in public libraries, because even though I'd seen some of the world's best libraries at Yale, I love what they had, but my real love was helping people. And the best way to do that, I found, was helping them with what I like to do, which is being in the public library and really making the most of what we can do in our public libraries. As Heidi mentioned, I was the first director of the Homestead Librarium. What drew me to that project was the fact that it was taking a new approach to how libraries work with technology, not just thinking of it as an add-on to, but as an integral part of what a library can bring to a community. And so starting with that, we started with virtual reality front and center in the library. It's become a very popular source of both entertainment and education for those that visit. It's also an attraction because you're not seeing virtual reality arcades or similar in libraries. But the reality is that it's another tool, just like computers have been, to engage the public and especially the youth into something fun and exciting and build those associations with their public libraries of fun, excitement, and inspiration. And that's what really has kept me there and inspired me. And that's what I've been doing as a librarian. I've always brought technology and hands-on learning and kind of those elements that bring excitement to those that visit libraries beyond the books. We know people love books, and we know people come to libraries because we offer high-quality materials and materials that are relevant to their daily lives. But if we want to have successful libraries that keep bringing in new patrons that are not growing up with the same culture of books, that we have to try to bring in new things. So originally that was computers, the internet, Wi-Fi. Then we went into maker spaces and fabrication labs, and now we're looking forward to the future to see what else we can do. And some of that has been virtual reality, augmented reality. I recently saw a robot guide greeting people at a library. And so there's lots of elements where you can have fun and really inspire, especially the youth, but really at all age levels to really engage with their libraries. And that's what I like to do, and that's what I want to do here in Escondido.
Thank you. Let's start with Carolyn.
Hey, great. Thank you so much, Reno. It's really nice to meet you. I'm Carolyn Clemens. I've been on the board for about 5 years now. It's really great to hear about your interest in technology, interest in vision for the future of libraries, something that we've talked about quite a bit on our board. However, I think that the basis of libraries is, the community, and we have a very diverse and interesting community. I'm wondering if you could talk about your philosophy of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how you would incorporate that as you're executing your director role.
Sure. So I'll begin by saying that I believe I lived that vision. My family is migrants. Both my parents migrated to the U.S. from Mexico, and so I'm a first-generation American here. One of the things they did early on was take me and my brother to our local public library, and that was in Anchorage, Alaska. That's where I was born in Kodiak, Alaska, but my first public library was up in Anchorage. Beautiful library, and with that experience, I not only know, one, what the immigrant experience is, and I know that's a major population source here in Escondido, but it's also something that I've noticed in all the libraries I've served in Florida. So in Homestead, we are a majority-minority community with over 50% of the population speaking Spanish as their first language at home, and we also have a large population of Haitian Creole and populations there in Homestead. Beyond that, in all the Florida libraries I've worked in, I've tried to work and incorporate Spanish in particular, since I speak it and write it. And it's something that's not really very common in library staff. We unfortunately, as a profession, tend not to have as diverse of a profession within as the people we serve. So my goal has always been to, one, figure out ways that our collections and services reflect the needs of the community. So for example, in Homestead, we originally had a Spanish language collection kind of hidden away. And so in my mind was like, why isn't it front and center? We want people to know what is available for them. So we moved that to the front near the entrance as soon as we could. And again, it's about thinking about how, one, the community engages with the library, and then two, what they know and don't know about libraries, because many communities, especially if they're coming from other countries, don't have the same culture and history and associations with libraries, and there might not be a culture of public libraries, and especially not on the same level as here in the States. So breaking down barriers and making it as accessible as possible for all people is one of the goals that I would bring to the library. And that takes many steps, and it involves having community conversations with who's in the community, conversations with staff that have been here and know the community and what has worked, what hasn't worked, and where there's still gaps so we can focus on enhancing those services. And then beyond that, just seeing where the trends are for growth and change in the community. Because cities change, communities change, neighborhoods change, and then with that, knowledge of their library changes. And so we always have to be constantly looking at how we can improve that. More on the data side, we in LSNS have something called Library IQ. Okay. And so I've been involved with conversations about improving like the diversity. We have a diversity tool in there for analyzing collections. That's a simple method. It's kind of an easy way of looking at how we have reflective, diverse collections. But really, I think it goes back, like you said, to the community and seeing what they're asking for and what they need. And that happens best through conversations and through interaction.
Just echoing off of that, thank you for joining us, Reno. It's very nice to meet you. So my name's Francis. My question's pretty straightforward, but from your experience as a library director, how would you increase awareness for the events that the library offers as Escondido's library director?
So awareness of events is always an interesting question because libraries tend to focus on advertising to people that already come to the library. Because it's easy. The method I would prefer and what we would look to kind of push more is going out to less traditional partners. So starting off would be easy with, meetings within the city departments, because a lot of times internally the city and, the departments that help and work with the library are some of the ones that don't really know what the library is doing, either because they're too busy or, they take us for granted, et cetera. But in the past, I've had, just attending interdepartmental meetings, talking about even briefly, these are some tools that you could use for use in the city, or just showing them, we're doing this event, working closely with parks and rec, of course, but also like senior centers. Economic development is also a department that is overlooked for partnership with libraries, but we are working with communities that are in need of, extra resources, of expanding, tools for businesses. There's a lot of ways to synergize what a library offers, especially for small businesses or entrepreneurs that work well with departments like economic development. Beyond that, reaching out to places that have gatherings of people in our community, supermarkets, laundromats. I remember doing a program where we would do story times at laundromats because that was where, mothers, single parents, et cetera, would have to go and they're waiting and they have usually their kids. And so it's an easy way, to do a pop-up story time or do a pop-up, English class, something like that, where you're kind of just telling people, this is what we do, you can find us here, but it's going to them rather than just expecting that they know where to find us and what we do. Because most people might just think, oh, the library's got books, I don't need books. But there's so many more services and activities they can do there. So those are just some examples.
Yeah, no, those are really great examples. The idea of meeting people where they're at is fascinating. Were you able to implement that a lot in Homestead?
We did quite a bit, yes. I did it more actually in a larger system in Clearwater, Florida, where we had a lot more branches, and so we had a lot more of a spread out community. In Homestead, the nice thing was that where we built the library happened to be where most of the people were going. And so our goal with Homestead was about educating people about what a library was, because we had such a large international population. And so a lot more of that was involving work with like churches and after school programs to get to parents. And we also have a large community in Homestead that is called Les Jardins, which is kind of like a Spanish language focused like after school and daycare system. So we do training for their staff, which then would also lead to training for their parents and kind of educating everybody about what is a library, how you use it, the benefits of early literacy, and why you would want to come to story time, why there's more than just books. So there's different levels. And again, for Escondido, one of my goals would be to kind of see where and who we're missing as far as patron groups, and to kind of identify the best ways to reach them. because every community is a little bit different, so I can't say for sure whether what we did in Homestead would be the same as what we would do here versus what we did in Clearwater or when I worked in Sarasota. It's all slightly different.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Hi, Reno. I have been on the board for almost 3 years, a little under 3 years, and my focus in joining the board was to make sure the younger community of Escondido is connected and utilizes the services that the city offers. I do have a high school daughter that's part of the Escondido Union High School District that's at school, so I see how much that the kids are not using the library or taking advantage of the services. So my question is, at your current position, it sounds like a focus is innovation and connecting and offering hands-on experiences. Can you give an example of something that you've put into place in the past where you worked at a company or an organization, a library, that has had challenge with funding those kinds of programs, and had you implemented getting the younger generation connected with the services?
Sure. So I'll mention almost all libraries have trouble with funding. It's just the way that public libraries in particular are. But I've noticed that the more restrictions you have on budget, the more creative you get to be when finding solutions. One of my favorite programs essentially cost nothing other than staff time and crafting materials. And that was a summer STEAM camp that was led by teens. So we marketed it as a leadership development program for the teens. We recruited them right before the summer, and we got a cohort of around 10 teens at that time. We spent 2 weeks training them on the different modules we would teach during the summer. So these were like architecture, video game design. I think one was engineering. We did one on space, which included a little bit about aliens. And so each module had a half-day or full-day camp, and each of the teens were in charge of leading a table of around 4 to 5 elementary school students. So they were ranging like 6 to 10. And we did a week where, I led the main program and the teens did the activities with the kids. And that's one of my favorites, just because in my mind, the best programs for teens aren't just the ones where we give them things, it's the ones where they build and they feel like they're part of the mission and part of the ownership of the library. Because not only do they have to learn about the material we're teaching, they learn about library services and how the library incorporates all the different elements. And so with that program, you end up having not only return teens, because we had them for a couple of years while I was still there. They came back and ran the camps, but excellent ambassadors for the library, because they realize it's not just the books that we do, it's really how we connect with, in that example, the kids, and then the subject matter that we taught, but also that it's not just like school, we make it fun. We're different from school. And that is one of the great takeaways. And that's how I always like to see our team programs, wherever we can find a way to involve them in that sense of ownership and really making it seem like the library is more than just a place to do things, but to really be and thrive. That I think is the best approach. And like I said, mostly it cost at that time was me as an intern in grad school, and then my librarian supervisor, and then some craft supplies. That was basically the cost of that camp. But you can imagine the value that the kids and the teens took away was far greater than the sum of those parts.
Hi, Reno. In looking at your resume, I find it kind of interesting that you were born and raised in Alaska and then went to Florida.
Yep.
But you've worked at 4 different organizations on both coasts, and it appears that each step has been a progression upward, which is what we like to see, and that this would be yet another progression upward. And I'm just making the assumption that you probably had more people to manage, pretty much more or less in each of those positions. And in this case, you're probably doubling that again. What is your management philosophy?
A great question. So yes, you are correct that with this move up, it would be around double the staff. My vision of managing and leading staff is always, in my mind, is how can I help them be the best they can be? So I view myself as an enhancer, and I like to lead by example. So you'll often find me, one, wandering the stacks to see how everybody's doing. I'll also be on occasion as needed on the desk. I'll do what is needed to make sure staff know that, I'm just not dictating. I'm there with them. I'm a partner with them. And as far as management, I look for ways of making, one, their jobs easier, but also what they do better. So looking to see, all right, what is the current workflow? That's going to be one of my main goals when I come in. What is everybody doing? How are we spending time? Is this the most efficient use of their time and the library's time? Can we improve, staff a little bit by adjusting schedules, workflows to provide better service at a better kind of, I don't want to say return on investment, but it's like, for your time, which is our main investment, are you getting as much as you can for the community? And then in that regard, it's working with them to identify ways of improving programs, ways of perhaps standardizing programs so that they have less time on prep, leveraging the Library Systems and Services network of libraries to find out other programs that have been successful elsewhere in similar communities. What can we do to adjust it for Escondido? All that to find the best use of everybody's time. But that's my goal. I'm looking for ways of enhancing not just the staff's delivery of services, but the library's offering of services. So if there's a way of reaching out for external partners that can maybe do something we can't, or that might provide expertise that is better served with an external partner, then we reach out to them. And I work with senior management and staff to kind of identify that, and then work with frontline staff on how we're going to promote, market, and implement those new services. And for me, I mostly like to see, I like to experiment. I like to see what can be done, and I'm not afraid of asking, can that be done better? And if I'm wrong, I'm also not opposed to being like, okay, I guess that didn't work out. Let's try something else and see if that works better. So really, again, I think we would summarize myself and my approach as looking to enhance and test.
Okay, well said. Thank you.
Hi, Reno. It's Maribel. I am new to the board, so I really appreciate all of the insight that you have provided us. So am I safe to assume that you've had a chance to look at the library and kind of get familiarized? Okay, great. So from what you've seen at the library, the programming, the staff, the atmosphere, currently, what is your perception of our library being tailored to our majority population?
Excellent question. So it's one I've actually been thinking about as to what I think of my thoughts as far as the Escondido Library. My first thought is we have a wonderful staff. I've had the pleasure of joining them during their staff development day, and I got to know more of their staff and really see, one, that they're very invested, very seasoned, they know their stuff, and they know their community. That being said, my second impression is that the library overall is great for a library 20 years ago. It was cutting edge probably when it was last updated, because there's excellent bones in the building and in the layout and everything. But overall, I'm not seeing what I would expect to see in a library that is current and up to date, as far as the types of services and the use of staff time, and some of the deliveries of those. Of course, I've seen that there's been limitations based on what we can do with the building currently, and I know that there is a major infrastructure investment being done to kind of help with remedy some issues. But I think that was my first takeaway when I first visited. It was, this would have been an amazing library 20 years ago, but we have fallen behind a bit. And one of my goals is to look to, what can we do on a budget and in an efficient manner to bring some of the newer services and approaches to library service that I've seen in some of the libraries I've led and some other fellow libraries in LSNS and across the country, to really bring Escondido the quality of service that I think it deserves. And it's not to say that what we have right now isn't good. I mean, it's great. They have great programs. I've looked over the types of programs. They're appropriate. The kids have a great time and during the story times. I got to see one of those. So the programs are good, but the types of services I think we can expand and improve upon. So we're going from good, but I want us to get to great and then beyond that. That's where I'm looking at.
Just following up. So I think that's a library overall, but what about how do you feel that the library is doing targeting our minority population?
So I'll have to say that I didn't get too much time to see how much Spanish language material we have or how our Spanish and minority targeting services are at. I do have to say that my impression is that our literacy services are amazing. Compared to many other libraries, we're doing a great job at targeting at least our literacy, so learning English for non-English speakers. Those services are very solid and great. Beyond that, though, the challenge will be how much of our staff speak Spanish or other languages. And then if we don't have enough staff to provide quality programs in other languages and reflective of the cultures and interests of our community that is diverse, finding community partners that can come in to show and kind of bolster and augment the services that we might be lacking in. I think a major area I would target would be adult services in that regard, and also our special collections, the Pioneer Room, which has a lot of history that ties back to migrant communities from what I can see, and the unspoken histories of our migrant communities. One of the reasons I also mentioned special collections in the Pioneer Room is that undeserved populations are also undeserved in the capture and sharing of their histories. And so working with the program to help give and capture the voices of our migrant communities and our international communities, and really all our communities, but especially those voices, would be a priority. And I've seen great projects in capturing oral histories, but also connecting, with the past as far as photograph collections and exhibits for those communities, and really getting them to come in, share their history, and then we as the library, that information center, with their permission, sharing it with the community at a larger level. And those are some areas where I think, digging in a little bit more is where I would want to target and move forward, at least at first, and then we can kind of figure out where we're missing.
Thank you.
Let's see. I actually really love that idea. I had participated in the Escondido Redistricting Commission, and during that time we had a lot of input from the community about, how they define their community, and I think that a lot of the history of Escondido is missing because folks aren't, either comfortable speaking up. So that's definitely something I would love to see. The other question I have for you is, changing a little bit, we have a very interesting history over the last 5-6 years of incorporating LSNS. I think most of us, if I can speak for us, think it's been a great success. However, there are certain groups in our city who, bring concerns up and everything like that. In addition, right, we notice a trend across the country of book challenges. So in circumstances where things get uncomfortable or heated, could you give us a little information on how you deal with situations like that?
Sure. So, of course, my role as a library director is to, one, work on behalf of staff and on behalf of the client, and then representing LSNS and being the liaison for everyone, essentially. When things get heated, and for example, book challenges in particular, one, we always fall back onto the policies that are established by the client, in this case, the City of Escondido and the Library Board. As you know, we in LSNS recommend policy but at the end of the day, it is up to the client and the city to decide what is the policy and how you would like us to enforce or implement policies. We come up with procedures, we come up with recommendations. So let's say a book gets challenged, we would turn to what is our existing library challenge policy. I would handle it, most likely it would go to the director first. For review, we would provide a decision, and then of course if it got escalated to the library board or beyond, then we would provide you with recommendations as far as current trends, etc. My views as a library director in this case is, we have a balancing act, right? As a public library, we have to provide materials that represent and are in the best interest of the community as a whole. So if we were to come up with that, I would advise as such and say, is this item something you think is worthy of having both either for one side or the other, and also always reminding you that people that might be against something, there's always going to be people that are also interested in it because somebody's against it. And so as a public library, being able to offer the information so both sides know what the other side's talking about, that's our role. And that's how, professionally we've been trained, and that's what our organizations and our education teaches us. But, at the end of the day, if the library board sees otherwise, we work to kind of enforce the policies that you see fit because you represent the city and the citizenry. Just like we try to do our best to provide the items that we think are best for the community. We have reasons for escalation, and we take it up to where it needs to be.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've had a chance to read the strategic plans for the Escondido Library, but part of that is like a Library of Things idea, and that connects, I think, well with the Cybrarium. So what could you see just from your limited experience last Friday potentially being part of Escondido's future in connection to the Library of Things?
I'll say I love Library of Things, and there's different approaches and different levels to Libraries of Things. Part of it has to do with how much space we have, because Library of Things are a lot stranger and more difficult to store than the usual books and DVDs and video games. So looking at building structure and where we have storage and then how we would display would be one aspect, but there's a lot of ways of introducing simple things. So for example, board games are an easy start. Beyond that, you want to look at what people are needing in the community and then also what you can do to enhance existing or future services. So I've seen libraries that'll hand out power tools in communities that have a lot of home repair or maybe a lot of renters or like simple repairs where you might not need a power drill every day, but every once in a while you might. And those are things that are pretty easy. We've done a lot of successful checkouts of STEM and STEAM kits for kids and teachers. Also literacy kits. So for STEAM kits, it's anything from a book and a gadget to something a little bit more advanced like a telescope. And again, those are all meant to encourage interaction and to remind those that visit that what we give is also a lot of times programs that we have, and vice versa. We want to build that strength of association between what is checked out with the services offered through the library. And I mentioned literacy kits. Those ones are, geared towards learners of early languages, little ABC books, things like that, manipulatives, targeting homeschoolers, young parents, etc. So there's different levels, and it's really, in my mind, it works best when you're tying it together with existing services, because then it's a very easy sell. You market it through the program, you market it through staff, and then they make those associations. Oh, we played with this thing in the program, now we can check it out. Again, it encourages them to keep the learning and the fun from the library at home, and then in theory also enforces those literacy skills because and almost all the kits will include a book to encourage them to read together as parent and child or just independently to reinforce those independent nonfiction learning skills when it comes to STEAM kits, and then of course those basic literacy skills when it comes to the other types of kits. but there's so much flexibility. And then of course there's more on the tech side, like hotspots, laptops, tablets, that are a little bit more about bridging the digital divide, bringing those techs to those that might not be able to afford them at home.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, what's attracting you to this position that maybe you're not getting at a current position that you're filling in?
It's a fun question. So my honest reaction, first of all, is that while I love Homestead and the Cybrarium, I've never been in love with Florida. So that's my first honest answer as far as why. But the reality is, when I looked at this, I did have a hard look and thought, okay, I'm very comfortable in Homestead. They love me. I love the library. We're just expanding. We're currently 2 floors, and it's going to be 4 floors now. So I'm leading that right now. I've left it in good hands. But when I was looking at Escondido, one, I love the idea of really pushing it farther, because I heard so many good things about Escondido. It's an amazing library, amazing staff, great services. And so I thought, okay, I know they're going to have this big grant for infrastructure. So that means they're going to be open for change and looking to see how we can enhance the services. And so in my mind, taking over a larger staff that has these skills and really working with them as a team to bring these improvements and these new services was exciting to me. And then of course moving to California was also a big plus. But really it was about working with this bigger team to really push already good programs to the next level. And also, honestly, I wanted to work with a library board. We don't have one in Homestead. I just report directly to the city manager there. So as a professional development move, I thought it was my next step to kind of move here and work with you, work with the library staff, and work with the city to see what we can do together to do even better here for the city and the community.
Just to give you a little bit of background, I tried to count up this morning how many people I've interviewed since 1976, and I can't. I discovered about 20 years ago that I'm an average interviewer. I'm not that good at it because I made some bad hires. So I found one of the most safe way to, especially when you're talking about a position as important as this one, is to check their references, the people they worked with in the past. So I did that. And like I said, I've been doing this for decades. I've never, when you, a lot of people coach their references on what they're supposed to say. I used to do that. And then some don't. But I talked to people that you didn't have any references listed, I don't think. But that was okay. I talked to some people that have worked with you at various locations, and without fail, they all were incredibly enthusiastic and effusive of their praise of your performance as both a manager and a leader. So that went a long way for me, because anybody can craft a good resume, which this is, but to have people that in previous organizations that think extremely highly of you says volumes to me. I know that's not an interview question, but so we now have a technology bent on this board with the addition of, especially with the addition of Francis. And also we've got a research expert with Maribel, and we've got an angry old man in me. So we're looking to do things differently as a board and continue to grow. there are lots of problems that we see that you're going to find, and every organization has problems, especially one that's been around as long as this has. And you have a board to deal with, and you have two bosses, as Dara used to tell me. She says, I've got two bosses. I've got the city and I've got LS&S. So that's going to be an interesting, probably, I don't know, have you had that before?
I have it right now with in Homestead, so I do have my boss in LS&S.
Okay.
And of course, I have the city managers who I work with.
Okay, can you just give us some thoughts on how you excel in handling that?
I'll start off by mentioning that I don't, while I know they're my bosses, I like to think of them more as my partners in running the library. So that I think is my approach, is how I like to think of it anyways. Of course, my goal is one, almost being as like an interpreter for both. So interpreting how LS&S does things and how we might see a procedure or what we recommend based on our years of experience. And I really rely, like I said, on my partners. In this case, it would be Heidi, to talk and decide, this is what the situation might be, or this is the problem, or this is the great news. How are we going to implement X, Y, and Z? And the same thing with Library Board and the city management team. It's about seeing what are one side's needs and expectations, what's the other side, and then of course what is the library and the patrons' needs. And combining those to kind of figure out the best approach for any scenario. Some people would say it's the difficult part. I think it's kind of like the fun part of being the library director, because that's our main job. That's what we're there for. We're there to be the interception of all these different viewpoints, and to filter and finesse it in a way that benefits the most people. Keeping in mind, of course, the needs of our patrons, and in my mind, as the head manager, our staff. What is the best thing for staff? Because I do have to say, the importance and well-being of staff is always paramount to me, and thinking about how we can make sure that the staff are happy, because if staff aren't happy, then patrons won't be happy, because we are a customer service industry. We are a profession that works to serve our communities. That means serving our patrons and our citizens, and we do that through our staff. And so, depending on what is asked of me here, I might say, that's a great idea, but let me see what can we do with the staff we have, with our resources, where it's going to pull from them, whether there's going to be too much stress, etc. And of course, in those discussions, I'll talk with Heidi and the rest of LS&S to figure out what we can do on a practical level. But those are kind of how I think as far as my role and interaction, as far as having multiple bosses and multiple stakeholders to live up to and to work with, really. Because I know the library has a lot of foundations and boards and support groups. Overall, what we're trying to do is to make the library a better place, and that's our starting ground. And then we might not always agree on what the method is, but my goal is to try to smooth it out so we all kind of see the same vision, and that the goal is ultimately to make the library the best it can be.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just got a tip for my career development is to have my references, give them a script. I didn't know that was a thing. Here I was doing the honor system, and I was like, I trust you. So we've addressed, some of your observations and some of the areas that you see that there's potential for growth. You've met the staff. So what do you anticipate being some obstacles for you? Whether that's, in terms of maybe your management style or from, the funding that you're used to. So from what you've seen, what do you anticipate being some obstacles coming into this role?
What I would think, as far as from what I've seen already, the only question marks I have currently is I haven't had a good chance to look at the budgets, and really how libraries and any institution uses their budget tells you a lot about what kind of institution they're running. So without having seen the budgets, it's hard for me to say exactly where there's like strengths and weaknesses in that regard. So that's just one question mark as far in my head where we're looking at. Beyond that, I'm not too worried about staff. Like I said, I got to see most of them, and everybody's really open to and excited about, a new library director, some new management, a little bit of change. There's always grumblings about too much change. But as I like to say, it's all about building that consensus before the change and making sure that they all think it's their idea that we're changing, even though it might not be. But beyond that, really, the main struggle, I think, in the next coming years is with the implementation of the infrastructure grant, how that will impact library services. So thinking about, will we have to temporarily close, for how long, which sections of the library will be closed. I'm not too worried, though, because I happen to have had to deal with something very similar in Homestead. Just last year, we had a flood that took out half of our lower floor. So our first floor, which was mostly our children's sections, so it had to be closed off. So that was, I would say, probably a third of our collections were impacted, and like almost half of the floor space. And so that involved finding solutions like moving the books, putting them onto mobile carts, adjustments to staff and programs. So there's a lot of, I'm not afraid of the change or of sudden catastrophes, apparently, because at the end of the day, if you have a solid team and you have good leadership and good support, then the library will survive, patrons will get their materials, and we'll do as many programs as we can in whatever fashion that might be. So that's, I think overall I'm an optimist is the summary of that, but yes, I'm not too concerned about any one thing.
Thank you.
I have one comment and just one last question. So the comment is kind of getting back to what John was saying. You have quite a diversity of experience up here. I think that in the past there have been a lot of times where we've come with ideas or interest, and for me, I would be interested in making sure that that it is also a partner role up here. So, I would really encourage you to leverage us as much as you possibly can. We have members on the board who are extremely involved in the community. We have folks, with program management experience and everything like that. So don't hesitate to reach out. And then my last question is, I don't know if we've touched on this yet, but we do have a large population of individuals experiencing homelessness. And one of the things that we're trying to do when we look into the vision of the future of the library is making sure that we kind of deliver a holistic approach, right? And that we are helping the city with, helping them to solve some of these crises, right? So can you speak to any history that you have with programming or things that you've done or metrics where you've shown improvement with regard to helping those who, are probably the most silent of our community and the most at risk?
Mm-hmm. So you bring up an excellent point, which is how do libraries serve those that are experiencing homelessness? As we all know, there's a lot of negative connotations, especially in the community, and then you get a lot of questions from staff all the time. What I always reply to them, at least when it comes to like serving people experiencing homelessness, is we treat them the same as any other person that walks into the door. We apply our policies fairly and equally across anyone. What does that mean? It means if they're sleeping and our policy is that they can't be sleeping, we tell them you can't be sleeping. Just like you would tell a teenager that is sleeping, you can't be sleeping. Or, whatever it might be. That's just one of the most common ones, as we all probably can imagine. But beyond that, types of programs that we can do. The reality is that unless library staff have a certified social worker, it's tricky. You have to bring in those experts that are best trained and ready to deal with the variety of different experiences that come in through the library, especially those that might include mental health issues, just medical health issues. We are librarians and we're library paraprofessionals. We are not necessarily social workers and doctors. Those exist in our communities, and we as centers for the community, both of information and coming together, can act as a spot for access to those services. So bringing in social workers, partnering with, community organizations that have those expertise, that is the route that I think makes the most sense for libraries. Like I said, we know how to do a STEAM program. We know how to do literacy. We know how to bridge the digital divide, and we can come up with great collection plans. But we are not those experts in the medicine, social work. We deal and we kind of work with patrons that experience those, but if we want to be a part in addressing those issues, we can't do it alone. We have to rely on those outside partners. And we can provide plenty of space, we can provide plenty of connection and information and resources, but unless we have staff that are trained to do that, specifically for that, it's not really the best role for libraries in that sense. We are connecting centers, we are information centers, we are community centers, and we can bring lots of people in, and that's what we're really good at.
I don't have any other questions, but thank you for your time.
Of course.
And we're here to help and be partners, as already been stated.
I have no further questions.
I don't have any further questions. I do have a comment I'd like to make, which I'm sorry that there are no other members of city staff here.
Happy to help, John.
Okay, well, I'm going to unload on you.
Oh, perfect. I'll take it.
Okay. When Carol and I came on this board 5 years ago, the city library was charging people for taking out books on CD. Okay? And I was told by managers within the city, we're not going to change that. You'll not get the city manager to change that. So we went out and got some statistics from 12 other libraries and shamed him into getting rid of it, basically. That's what I think, anyway, because it just showed that we stuck out like a sore thumb, and it was a terrible thing. So anyway, this board is appointed by the elected officials of the city. Our job is to give the best possible library to the constituents of this city. And over the past 5 years, I think we've changed from a board that just sat here and rubber stamped stuff to one that's more active and pushing back on, so we got politics involved, sorry. And I've never been a fan of interviewing by committee. I like the one-on-one approach, which the city has resisted us twice in a row now, and I'm extremely disappointed in that approach. Luckily, I was able to find out everything I needed from Reno without even talking to him, basically. But I think it would be much better if one or two of us had the opportunity to sit down with him one-on-one and have discussions and bring those discussions to this board at this meeting. That's perfectly in line with any rules and regulations, Brown Act included. And I'm rather disappointed in the city's refusal to let us do that. Okay? And I hope that I will never be involved in interviewing a library director again, because I hope you're around a long time. And I could term out in 2 years. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for coming, and I'm very impressed with you and looking forward to working with you.
No further questions for me.
Thank you, everyone, for your great questions, and Rena for your very insightful answers. It gave us a good glimpse of who you are and what you're about. Zach, I think the next thing that we would like to do is give our individual feedback on any questions, comments, or feedback to see if we're ready to make a motion to vote.
Sure.
Carolyn, would you like to start?
I sure would. I think, Reno, you are a breath of fresh air. I am very excited. I love that you, it seems to me that you come to the table as more of a consultant, right? And with a consulting background myself, talking about, stakeholder management, being a partner, it really seems like you're ready to be part of the team. So again, I would just encourage you to, reach out whenever you want to or can. When you have ideas, we're here to listen. We're excited. We're a very engaged board, and I'm very excited to see what you do.
Same here, very excited. I think the idea of momentum is something that I love to think about, and hopefully your appointment could lead to a lot of momentum for the library in a lot of positive directions. There will be challenges with any other position, as you know, but we're here to help with that, as I mentioned earlier, and be a partner.
Okay, Rena, what I really appreciated about what you were sharing is we learned what's important to you. And your leadership style is one that can be respected, and that you're the type of leader that I like to work with. I love your collaborative approach, and your vision is exactly what's needed for Escondido, and I really appreciate your resourcefulness because that is also very needed for Escondido. I appreciate your passion to build a better environment. I can tell that you really thrive in connecting the dots and leaving things better than you found it. So I think you're a great candidate for this position.
All I can do is echo everything that's been said so far, and I'm impressed by your management style.
Again, I echo what my colleagues here have said. I think you've hit on some of the points of prior conversations that we have discussed. And so just know that as a partnership, again, we're all trying to make the library a better place. And so we have explored and just have conversed about a lot of what you have brought up. So just in terms of transparency, again, I'm new to the board. Has LSNS considered other candidates as well, or is Reno the only candidate that we will be speaking with?
Nadia, you can go to the center podium if you want Reno to stay there. Yeah, no worries.
Which button?
Oh, it's on. It's
Okay.
on.
There we go. Hi, everyone. This is Heidi Dollamore again. So we engaged in a nationwide search and reviewed a number of applicants. I can't tell you the number right off the top of my head, but Reno was far and away the top, the most outstanding, and was the finalist that we chose to present to you as our recommendation. Oftentimes, when we're engaging in a search at this level, we will bring forward 2 finalists. However, Reno just was so head and shoulders above that we were very excited to present him to you and felt thoroughly confident presenting him as our recommendation.
To that, just for public knowledge, can you let us know who the candidate or candidates met with as far as the city is involved, outside of LSNS, and were any other candidates presented for interview with the city?
Sure. So as part of our, I can walk you through just our process. We have a recruiter that internally that helps us with initial screenings. So we cast a wide net and utilize our networks as well as the established venues for promoting a professional position of this nature. There are a number of job boards within the field. So we utilize those. From there. We screen a wide array of candidates, and then we put them through multiple internal panels. Once we have narrowed down to a semi-finalist or finalist cohort, then we make a decision about bringing someone on for a site visit. In this case, we did recommend a single candidate for a site visit, and as part of that process, we involved the staff and gave, obviously we want to make sure that this is a good fit from both sides. So it's an opportunity for the candidate to get to know the library as we are getting to know the candidate. In this case, it's a candidate that we know very well because we work with him in another part of our organization. So there's an opportunity to get to know the staff. We also had a meeting with our city liaison, Joanna, and she had the opportunity to interview him as well.
I have a follow-up question. So in terms of meeting with staff, is that something that the board is able to gauge and converse with staff, or how does the board become aware of the staff's perceptions of the candidate?
So I'm not sure if...
Okay, I think maybe I'm the only one that was here the last time. Well, we were both here when Dara was interviewed. Okay. And it was basically brought to us, here's the candidate we want. You're welcome to ask her many questions. But we were not asked for... we were not asked to do a thorough interview, and I don't remember even seeing her resume in advance of the meeting.
Right, and I think that the reason why John is bringing all of this up is because it is in our bylaws that we are responsible, a second party responsible for the entire process.
It's on page 14 of the attachment A of the LS&S city contract. We and the city manager, his designator, are the ones that choose who the library director is going to be.
Right. So I think you know, obviously there's room for improvement for the next time this occurs. Like John said, I hope I'm not here when that happens, but I think maybe we should table it and maybe have a discussion with Joanna and say, you know, this is how we'd like to proceed in the future. Maribel, did you have any other questions?
No. So I think that's
Okay.
kind of where these responses, I was thinking of maybe tabling this. I think Joanna will not be part of that conversation. Right. I think there's someone succeeding her, so that in the future, I think that the board is a little bit clear on the process of candidates and being more involved in the process. Just kind of how it seems like it's outlined in the contract. And in the education code for doing that. But I think this is more of a future discussion.
And I'm extremely disappointed that we've got Reno stuck here in the middle of this conversation. I really am.
You're great, Reno. It's just these other supplemental questions.
I think with that then, I will make a motion for approval of Reno as the new library director.
I will second that.
All those in favor? All right. We'll do a hand vote since Virginia's not in the system this time. We'll get, motion approved, 5-0. Yeah, great. Yeah, congratulations, Reno.
Thanks, Reno.
To the trustee's point, I appreciate you bringing that feedback up. I was thinking, and I apologize because this is a little bit outside my wheelhouse, but perhaps it might be beneficial just for Brown Act purposes if we selected a subcommittee as a library board that maybe did an initial round of interviews, so that way when you come back, you could still have the full interview. That might be a way to do it. Just a thought.
No, that's a perfect thought, because that was suggested a week and a half ago to the city, and they disregarded it.
Got it. Okay, that makes
Zach,
sense.
how do we memorialize that so that it is something that we could refer to in the future.
I think what we should do since it's not agendized right now, if in the future agenda portion of this meeting at the very end, right now is totally fine, but if you just want to put forward that we're going to create a subcommittee for interviewing future library directors in 10, 15, 25 years from now, whenever this is.
When Reno retires.
Sorry, you could vote at that in the October meeting. I think that would be fine, and then we could make sure that specific language is then adopted into your bylaws. That's how I would suggest going about it.
Okay, can I just say that I make a motion to approve, I put forth a motion with what Zach just said.
To add that to the October 12th agenda, yes.
We'll add it to October, and then we'll vote there, right?
Yes.
Because we
If you
can't
voted-
vote
yeah,
anything.
The actual vote can't happen. The vote to put it on the agenda, any one of you can do that. It doesn't require two. So if John, I think your motion is sufficient to get it on the October agenda. Perfect. Great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Number 3, youth services and adult literacy update. Dan?
I will try to follow up Reno. That's going to be a hard act to follow. I'll touch on I'll start with our adult literacy, then I'll move over to our youth services. I'll just speak to what I think has really just kind of highlighted this year. So we started our ESL classes about a year ago, this past September, and over the last year, we've really been able to expand those. When we first started out, it was just twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then we followed the school semester system because a lot of our students coming for the classes have kiddos that are in the local school district, so it kind of makes this really nice synergy. Their kids are going to school and they're going to school, so they all get homework together, which is kind of fantastic. So we went from 2 classes to 3 classes, and then this past fall, when we started up here in August, we're now offering ESL classes 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we're offering 5 different classes, which is fabulous. So we got very much beginner classes all the way up to about intermediate, and we've had great luck recruiting through the school system. Is everyone familiar with Peach Jar? Perfect. We use Peach Jar. That's where we've gotten a lot of our ESL students from, and it's just been really fabulous. We were able to add new staff through the literacy grant that we get through the state of California as well. So we went from like having 2 literacy staff up to having 5 literacy staff, which is fabulous, and it has really helped to expand our program and continue that outreach that we've seen. So I hope to be back here in a year saying we've now added 10 classes. We are hosting these at the library, and we're always intent to get these classes out into the community and meeting people where they are at. So we're looking to look in the future, recruit volunteers that can help us teach those classes. We provide all the material and the curriculum development for that, and just be real good community support on that. To flip over to the youth services side of things, we've been utilizing a lot of community partners over the last year or so, but some of the highlights that I'm really excited about, working with the Air and Space Museum. I think Dara had spoken to this at the last one, but we've had these great Storytime Engineer programs. One of my favorite ones they did was the 3 Little Pigs in Space, where they had to basically build a space base with the little pigs as strong as they could against the big bad wolf comet. So they got to learn a lot about these big, high concepts in the form of play and a lot of stories, and all the participants got to go home with a backpack that had a book in it and a lot of other play materials to enhance the learning. That was all done through a grant that the museum got, and we've definitely encouraged them, hey, work with Escondido. We're a very easy location to come to. When I've spoken with the folks that are at the museum running these educational programs, one of their goals is to get into North County. I've told them, hey, use Escondido. We're easy, smart, and then you can go to all the other libraries. So I think we're hopefully looking forward to that. Another one is we worked with naval aviation pilots from the Navy itself, and they came out to one of our story times and presented basically all their gear and parachutes and everything, and played and danced with all the kids, which was really cool. So we'll be having them back as well. I'm going to be working with a lady who does mini horse therapy. to come out and show kids this is what a mini horse is, and this is how they're utilized through therapy. We have therapy dogs that come in, the kids get to read to as well as partnered with Eco Vivarium, a local partnership here that brings in their little bearded dragons, so we do a read to a dragon, so this is like, yeah, we need to do a horse now. If I can get the dogs the same week, I could call it a little dog and pony show, but yeah, we'll see. I'm horrible. And the other one I'm really, really thrilled about was, in my opinion, actual direct community feedback that led to a new program that we instigated. Over the summer, I'd say, before we got started, we had a local group. I'm not going to say the name right, but it basically translates to Thursday Spanish, where we had a local mom group come in on Thursday nights, where they were trying to teach their young ones, about 5 or 6, Spanish. She's not a native speaker, but her husband is, and she started to run a little bit of a group there. One of my staff in youth services, Mrs. Garcia, saw that and went over and asked them, hey, do you want me to do a 20-minute story time with you, which she did, and then that blossomed into them starting to come back every week to talk with Mrs. Garcia for about 20, 30 minutes. And then we decided, there's a community need here. So as of, I'll say, last month, we've officially started a weekly Thursday night storytime program for the community, all in Spanish. Mrs. Garcia leads it. They're using it as an opportunity to learn Spanish. She does books, she does crafts that help enhance the story that she's doing, and we're super, super excited about that. And that was just the direct community coming in, using the library, staff making an observation like, yep, we're going to respond to that. And we rolled that out within less than 3 months, I'd say. So we're very, very excited about that one. So that kind of covers over our big goals, but continue to both sides of ESL, our adult literacy, and our youth services, continuing to reach out to our local community partners, bringing them in to help us run programming, which has been very successful for us.
Thank you, Dan. Great stuff going on there and exciting news. I do need to give a shout out to Miss Garcia. I am part of the Escondido Moms group on Facebook.
Yes,
she's famous.
Oh, yes, she is. She does a lot of our Toddler Tale story times, which I'll get to in our monthly report, but she's a dynamo in this community. It's like when she says we need to do something from the community, it's like, yep, we're listening to her.
Yeah.
So she's fabulous.
So she got rave reviews, and I did tell the group that I would mention it at the board meeting. So please give her the feedback that we appreciate how much she's doing for the community.
Oh, she's going to be so excited to hear that. I will pass it on. Thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments?
Dan, the Aerospace Museum, it's like a 30-mile hike from here. What are the chances of that continuing in future years as far as the grant they're getting?
So that depends. I know they're always seeking grant funding to expand their programming, so I'm hoping it continues. It may not be this particular program, but there will be other opportunities we're looking for. I'm not sure what they will be, but it just depends on what the grant programming that the museum itself gets.
I'm wondering if they fail to get a grant, if we could try to get one to finance their continued.
Yeah, that absolutely. I think that's definitely worth a consideration and
Okay,
conversation.
let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I just, Dan, want to say it's always a pleasure to hear from you. We love when you come in and talk to us about the literacy program. I think it's just a shining beacon for Escondido. So just keep up the good work.
Will do. I'll pass. It's all the staff there. I just tell them, do whatever you need to do. It's all them. I'll pass on your kind words. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, additional library programming discussion.
That's me. I almost forgot. So this kind of ties in the last month since our last board meeting. I went to a program at the Carlsbad Library. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of it. It's called the Fix It Clinic. So it's this organization trying to, I think it would hit 2 parts from our strategic plan. So embracing emerging services and the resilience to reduce waste. So the concept is they have a lot of volunteers. It is a program that there's a fee associated to it, but they have a lot of volunteers that are they know a lot of different trades, from mending clothes to fixing bikes, power tools, etc. And the concept is that the community signs up for this free event at a certain time slot, and they show up, and they can receive and be taught how to repair the item that they brought. So it's really about providing the community with that skill set to be able to repair and not just throw things into the landfill. And so I think this would be a really neat type of programming to bring to Escondido. I know that they are starting to venture into the North County area. If anybody is interested, I know they will be in Fallbrook, I believe this weekend. They will be having Fallbrook and another one in Carlsbad or Oceanside in October. So this is a type of program that I think I would like to Escondido would like to explore. I did speak with the director, I believe it was with the program, about bringing this here to Escondido, and to leverage funding. Some cities, what they have done is haven't gotten their public works department involved, because it is like a reduce reuse type of event that sometimes they're able to pull funding from those programmings if the library did not have that in there. So I just wanted to introduce one of those programs. Kind of a secondary program that I saw in there is they had a seed library, and so I think they had like a local partner that would provide seeds, and so there would be books in that display area, and families are welcome to just come in without a library card, come in and take a couple seeds, so they can grow herbs or regular plants in their gardens. So I think those are some accessible options that minimal space that it would require to bring into the library.
Do you know what the cost is?
I don't remember the exact number, but I believe it was between $2,000 to $2,300.
Okay, so that's something that we could likely fund out of the trust if that's something we wanted to do. I would be interested to understand what staff thinks, how they would want to implement it. So maybe that can be a topic for next month is, feasibility, or, is it a good idea, recommendation from the staff?
Right. And Reno should also, if you're not already aware, Friends of the Library gives you guys a lot of money, so maybe we could just go buy some more of their surplus books and fund this for you.
And then,
sorry. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to add.
Just to kind of tie in, I know the board we've discussed, and even in the strategic planning committee, we had discussed, right, the Library of Things, having those spaces. Some of the points that Reno brought up is tailoring our programs to promote that and to teach the community the skills to be able to use those, right? So I think a program like this, right, teaching people how to mend their own clothes, right, whether in the future, right, not saying that we need to have this, but we end up having sewing machines, right? If teaching folks how to repair their bikes, well, we'll have small power tools and all of that at the library. I think it would be a very good combination.
I would love to contribute to the seed library. We've grown a ton of heirloom tomatoes, and we've harvested the seeds last year and this year. So I'm up for that. And then I will volunteer my husband to help people fix their bikes because he's a big bike guy.
I didn't know that. In my youth, I had a bicycle shop, so I can fix them too.
And then an added part too, so the director with the Fix It Clinic, so their whole conception behind this is, at the beginning, it may be them coming in, whether it's monthly or, what the schedule allows. But eventually they want these clinics to be homegrown. So, first they would bring in their volunteers, but eventually we have other community members who have their own expertise, and the library is able to host them on their own without having to bring in and pay for an additional partner. So this is kind of exactly what the whole concept is about.
Do you know if we could find more information anywhere? Is there a website or anything?
There is. I brought a flyer that I took from them. I honestly, I just Googled like San Diego Fix-It clinics. How do I get this shared to everybody? It's just one flyer. I probably should have grabbed a couple. And that's just for the Carlsbad Library. So the dates on there are just the ones that we'll be having at Carlsbad. But on their website, they have one. I believe it's this weekend. And actually wrote down the dates. I have it right in front of me, so while he's getting that set up. So this weekend, there will be one at the Lakeside Library, October 7th up in Fallbrook. So that's, I think, the first time they're making their way up there. October 21st, they'll be back at the Carlsbad Library, if any of you wanted to check it out. I took one of my machines. I kind of knew it was a goner. I still tried, just giving it one last chance. Whether it's like a shirt or something, I definitely recommend everybody checks it out.
Sorry, the visualizer's not working. I'll take a picture of it and I can email it to the full group if you'd like.
Yep, perfect.
Zach, thank you, Maribel, for bringing that to our attention. And I would like to continue this conversation, so I make a motion to add this to the agenda for next meeting.
Second?
For procedural purposes, any trustee can put forward an item just to place on future agenda. So I've taken notes from Trustee Reyes. Those will be added to the agenda for October.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to library staff. We'll review the library statistics for July 2023.
I think that's me again. So I don't know how this normally goes. Do I just tell you what the stats are? Do we discuss things?
Dan, you might need to turn your microphone on again. I'm so sorry. It looks like it turned off.
How about that? Can you hear me? How about now?
Better.
There we go. So I have, quite frankly, I've never done this. So do I discuss the stats with you, where we're at? Do I read them down?
Usually we just look it down. 'Cause,
Okay.
We're provided the agenda, and then any highlights, usually you let us know.
Yeah, I don't know if it was cut off or we usually have comparison to previous month.
Gotcha. So I was basing it off the last one I had seen that didn't have the previous months. So I'm so sorry about
That's
that.
okay. So you guys, Zach, is it?
Mine from last month, if anybody
Okay.
wants to compare it.
I think I do too, actually. Zach, is it possible to put item number 5 up on the screen so that we can see the current numbers?
Are you referring to the review of the statistics report right
Yeah,
now?
the monthly statistics.
Or you want to see the agenda packet, the actual item? Yeah, I can come down to the council dais and get that up for you. One sec.
You guys can look at that if you'd like.
No, you're okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Question I've always wanted to ask and never did.
Sure.
The total registered borrowers, how meaningful is that compared to other statistics you might have about our patrons? Like how many are actually active out of the total registered?
So that, I don't know that I'm going to be able to answer for you, but I can come back with an answer for you at the next meeting.
Sounds good?
Dan, I think I know what happened. You're right. In our packet from last month. Only June is listed in the packet, but then I think Dara handed us a handout when we got here with the 3 months.
Right. I think
Okay.
thinks she was having a problem with
Yeah.
the software or something. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll know for next month to get the comparisons for you.
Okay, any other questions on the statistics? No, okay. We can move on to number 6, library staff review of the library's meeting the goals and objectives of the strategic plan.
All right, so I can definitely speak to a couple of the things that we are doing here that are touching upon the Community Hub Cultural Connector, part of the strategic plan. So the leveling partnerships for visibility. We do have the Museum of Arts. We have the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, where we attend at least a once-a-month story time that we do there to promote library services, and also the San Diego Air and Space Museum. So they promote the programming that we're doing at the library through their website as an option. And then for the second part, increasing EPL visibility by library staff presenting at community events. We have been at several back-to-school and reading nights over the course of August and September. It's been very nice to see this year a lot of the school district is reopening up to having a lot of folks coming back on to do out-person outreach. So that's where we get a lot of our promotion of what we're doing at the library. So it's nice to see that we're getting a return to that. To jump down to the embracing diverse cultures, we've done 2 years now of the Innovation Lab Grant, which is fantastic. It focuses on reaching out to the immigrant community here in Escondido and inviting them into the library to provide programming centered around those cultures. So we just did this year for 2023, we have the Cultural Fair series that are celebrating 3 different cultures. We held a Ukrainian cultural art fair this past Saturday that saw, off the top of my head, I have to verify the number, but I believe I was told it was over 100 people that attended. The program ran for about 2 hours, so it was a combination of a lecture of Ukrainian culture, sharing of music, sharing of food, sharing of art that they created. We had an entire entire wall in our community room filled with artwork from that culture that they got to share. And we had folks of little babies all the way up to we'll say north of 60 in the room. So it was very nice to see that engagement. And we did have a few refugee families that are from the Ukraine that came and attended that program and got a little bit of a slice of home, and they got to make some connections with community members they did not know were here. So it was very, very awesome to see that. And then I think it's in November, we're going to have one focusing on Afghan culture and art, which is very, very fun. I think this is a grant that's very competitive, but one that we will continue to go for because it does allow us to reach out and make those connections and provide programming that we haven't traditionally been able to provide at the library.
I have a question. Can you tell us how we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month in the library currently?
That I do not have an answer to. I know it started last Friday. I know we generally tend to do a lot of displays with that, but no programming centered around it that I am aware of.
Okay.
But we tend to do a lot of programming with our Dia de los Muertos, our Day of the Book, Day of the Child. I'll look back and talk with my staff and maybe have a different answer for you at our next meeting just to see if they are doing something.
Okay.
I've been kind of in the weeds dealing with a lot of stuff, so I'm not like aware, but I'm aware.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And, Escondido's been doing a really good job of having the community events, the festivals, Grape Day Park, things like that. Is it a given that the library has a booth at each one of these festivals?
We were at the Grape Day Festival this past, forget what weekend it was, but we were there. We focused on our Pioneer Room to celebrate the history that was in there and to get folks out to that. We don't have the staff to attend every event, but we try to be at as many as we can.
Any other questions, comments? Go again. We've talked previously about, I saw on that slide, social media. And We had talked previously a couple times about what we're doing as far as social media campaigns and how we're ramping up to, especially to get the younger generation connected. We would like to hear about that in the coming months, what our social media campaigns are and initiatives are. We haven't heard about that in a while. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the library director's report.
Oh, boy, me again.
Yep, it's all you.
Oh, boy. So for this one, for the highlights for August, I wanted to focus on the wrap-up that we did for our summer reading challenge. This is one of our bigger pushes that we do throughout the year to get people engaged with the library and to encourage the learning throughout the summer, be a kid or an adult. So if we were to look at our numbers here, we had 204 babies, 604 kids, 316 tweens. To put it in context what tweens are, those are the 9 to 12-year-olds, not old enough to be, they're too old to be doing kid things, but too young to be doing teen things. So we've started to focus some of our programming around tweens so they have something as well. We had 149 teens, 282 adults, and 1,565 overall that participated throughout the summer. So that was through reading, attending programming, and a whole bunch of things like that. We usually, with the babies, encourage activities because they're not at a reading age yet, but we like to reinforce the singing, the talking, the walking, just daily learning. And then with the kids, tweens, and teens, we focus on hours read because that's important, but it doesn't matter what they're reading, just that they're reading. Certainly encourage that. Then we get back to the adults again where they're so busy, we can encourage activity-based engagement, be it read a book, attend a library program, engage with a social media post, or even attend a local community event. And then moving on, we had our adult services hosted a 5-week financial literacy workshop in partnership with World System Builders that was presented in English and Spanish. Each week covered different topics such as building savings and wealth, your wealth and health, understanding asset accumulation strategies, and fulfilling long-term goals. Those were held on Saturdays so that folks that normally work during the week were able to attend the workshops. They held their regular second Saturday concert series, which was a opera duo that did a wide range of classical to Broadway, which was very nice. We also have returned to our Toddler Tale story time again with Mrs. Garcia. We saw a need towards the end of, not the end, but in our spring, towards the end of spring, beginning of summer, our toddler programs were seeing 120 per one story time. So we decided to split that into Tuesdays and Thursdays. And since we returned from our summer break, we're now averaging between 120 to 150 per story time. So this is a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of what I'm dubbing COVID babies that are now growing up and into the needing to socialize and get this learning. So we were able to adapt our programming to that need. The staff does a stellar job, but it's like, I promise there's an end in sight and maybe eventually that will go back down. But for now, it's very fun to see. It's a big community of those kiddos that have really just kind of grown up with us a little bit over the last couple of years. So I'm warning Mrs. Cox, who does our preschool story time, watch out, you're going to have big numbers in about a year. So that was fun. And then we did, one of my favorite programs we do each year is the 5th annual Kids San Diego Poetry annual program that we do in partnership with the San Diego Poetry Annual. They basically have, it's the San Diego Entertainment and Arts Guild. They come in and basically teach kids, hey, this is how you make a poem. And then once they're done with that, they can turn the poem in and actually get published. So all the books that they've done over the last 4 years, we have over in the library. So they can come in and say, hey, I'm a published author, which is fantastic. So it's been a wonderful programming that we've done, and we're looking to expand that into not just once, but maybe twice or 3 times a year in the coming year. So we're very excited about that. So that covers my updates for the month.
Dan, thank you for filling in, doing your job and the job of others and trying your best, and you did fabulous.
I appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
I appreciate your effort. Any questions on the director's report?
Again, thank you, Dan. Really appreciate, you stepping up in the interim and really making this role yours for right now. So for this, I went to the Saturday concert series, and I think it was Dos Amigos.
Yes, we have a second Saturday concert series once a month, so I think that was September? No, or was that?
Yes, that was September.
September, okay.
Yes. And so I really enjoyed it. The musicians, they were great. I think for me, and I think this may be like a future director type of conversation, but I do want to put this out there. I want to try to see how we can make some of these programmings accessible for different generations. So again, the music was great. I took my little one. He really enjoyed it, but he is little. He's one, right? So I think whether it's how we have the chairs set up, or what supplemental activities we have to keep a 1-year-old entertained, right? Because it was really hard to just have him on my lap and just observe, right? But again, I think exposing him to music, to be able to listen, I think that's some room where we want to explore different options, whether it's having like a little coloring table at the back or alternate activities where obviously, we keep our noise down. But me as an adult can go and enjoy it, but also bring my little one and family members along. Or, again, I noticed that there were a lot of older folks there, right? I was by far, other than the babies, the youngest one there, I would say. And so it's how do we attract, those young adults, right, that who may not want to be just sitting there, whether it's like tables. I'm not sure what the policy is on food and beverages in the Turrentine room, right?
We can serve them as part of programming.
Yeah, so part of serving that as programming, like refreshments, snacks for the I say students, for the little ones, right? So I think the programming that we have is great. I think just trying to make it an enjoyable experience, intergenerational.
Thank you. As part of this section, we usually give a board of directors report of any interactions that we've had with the library over the past month or a library. Carolyn, do you have anything to share?
So I went into the library, I think at the beginning of this month, and noticed right up front the banned books display, which I absolutely loved. I combed through that and got one and read it and thought it was wonderful. So yeah, I really liked seeing that. Thank you.
For me, last Friday, I stopped by the library during the staff development training, and I had a chance to sit outside while I was waiting to come in, and there was a steady stream of citizens that were coming to the door not knowing that the library was closed, and they were all very disappointed. So for me, that just reaffirmed the necessity of the library services in the community. I saw it firsthand, at least 10 people very disappointed that they couldn't access a computer, they couldn't get a book. They were asking me questions, and I just happened to be sitting out there saying, the library's closed for staff development. So I just wanted to pass that on. Yep.
The item that I was going to share was about Miss Garcia, which I already got a chance to. John?
Nothing much new. I come in every Saturday or Monday and read the latest issue of Barron's and Peace and Quiet and go back home.
I think I kind of reported out through quite a bit of the meeting. So doing that Saturday concert series and then visiting the Carlsbad Library for the Fix It Clinic.
Everyone, I think the next meeting is a special meeting Thursday, October 12th at 6 p.m. And Carolyn, you're not going to be able to attend that meeting?
Unfortunately, I will be on travel at that
Okay.
time. Yep. So.
Is anyone else planning to be out that meeting? Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and move forward as planned. And if there's no other items, oh, go ahead, Zach.
Just one thing I might want to add. Jennifer, did you want to introduce yourself to the board since you're here? Yeah, Jennifer Schoenig, Director of Economic Development and now overseeing community services. Will be serving as staff liaison, so if you give you a moment to introduce yourself.
Hello, thank you so much for introducing me, Zach, and I'm happy to see you here this afternoon. So my name is Jennifer Shenick. I am the Director of Economic Development for the City of Escondido. I joined the city 2 years ago to oversee economic development, and recently Community Services has been placed under our department as well. So I will be your staff liaison, and it's been so good to hear some of your feedback, and I look forward to joining all of your meetings moving forward and interacting with our new director of the library as well. Thank you.
Jennifer, having worked with you before, I'm really pleased to see you here.
Thank you.
Oh, so just for clarification, because I thought, and I could be wrong, maybe I read it wrong, that we got an email from Joanne saying that Danielle would be our liaison, so I'm a little confused.
Great question, and it's understandable that there's confusion. So, correct, Danielle was appointed to be the liaison. However, we had a staff depart in Housing and Neighborhood Services, and Danielle has that skill set. So Danielle will be temporarily our Housing and Neighborhood Services manager as well, and I will be your staff liaison. Thank you.
Zach, it was great to have you here today, and thank you for your leadership and keeping us organized.
Happy to help out. Thanks so much for having me. And I want to introduce you Angela. She is our intern in the city clerk's office, the chairwoman of the Youth Commission in Escondido, and doing a great job, and she wanted to come and be a part of this meeting. So just introduce her. Yeah, cool.
Welcome.
Thank you. It was really great hearing you all speak. I learned a lot, honestly, from listening to your meetings. I thank you so much for letting me sit here.
And what school are you at?
I recently moved to Del Lago. I went to Orange Glen for a year before, and then before that, I did my first 2 years of high school at Valley Center High School in Valley Center. So yeah.
I'm on my way to Del Lago right after this for my daughter's volleyball game. She's a student there.
Oh, nice. I heard the team is really good. So congratulations to her.
Welcome. Okay, now we can adjourn. Thank you.